Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Trucking Tower podcast and this edition of Heroes in Trucking. I'm very excited to be joined today by Bonnie Hagemann, who is the CEO of EDA and also the co-founder of Women Execs on Boards. She is also the cousin of Rodney Timms, founder of All Truckers Together Against Child Abuse, which I have featured several times on the show and where I'm a spokesperson. How are you doing today, Bonnie?
I'm doing great. How are you, Andy?
Doing really well, thank you. You know, you and I have a common connection with ATTACA, All Truckers Together Against Child Abuse. Kind of tell us a little bit about your background there.
Oh, I'd love to. So I'm from Western Oklahoma, where I grew up on a farm. And so I'm first cousins with Rodney. My dad and his dad were brothers. And so I do want to say thank you for all that you're doing with ATTACA because that's a great organization. And I do hope your listeners will get involved. You know, it's All Truckers Against Child Abuse. And, we can really raise awareness if we join together. I'm certainly a supporter and just encourage everyone listening to look at that as a way to raise awareness and get people to where they need to go to get some help.
Absolutely. And, you and I were talking a little bit before. And would you mind giving everybody an overview about EDA and Women Execs on Boards also?
Absolutely. So, you might wonder, how did I get from Hammond into the corporate world? Well, and Hammond's the Western Oklahoma town where I grew up in. And basically what happened was I got a vision for my life, and I now have a book out called Leading with Vision. And, the visionary leadership is something I learned from my dad. And as a farmer, he would be able to see ahead of what needed to be done and then paint the picture for all of us to do it. And so when I was young, he was like that with us, just kept encouraging us to see the picture of the future and go toward that. And so that's what I did. I started out in public education, thinking I was going to teach at a university, and found out that that was not for me at all. Having been raised exactly like a Western Oklahoma boy, I fit much better in the corporate world. So as soon as I was introduced to that, doing some work with Ditch Witch, I made the switch and got out of public education, counseling and things that I had done there. And that was only like 3 years. And then I got over into corporate and I started doing executive education over time. And then I started running companies that do executive leadership and executive education. In 2001, I did an acquisition in 2007, and that's how we got EDA. And so I'm still running that today. So EDA is a top of the house corporate education company. So we do leadership and executive development. We do succession planning, hypo development, high potentials, and things like that. And we're building a really cool technology that we'll be rolling out this summer. So that's a little background on EDA. And then you mentioned the network. You want me to tell about that too?
Yeah, tell us about that. And, the Women Execs on Boards, I think you're talking about, right? Yes. Yeah. Tell us
Correct.
About that.
So that's, if I ever write a book, I'll probably call it Hammond to Harvard, because what happened was, as I started working with all these corporations, I started at the bottom. I started coaching people who were frontline supervisors and worked my way to the top. And so, but as I was working with CEOs and their boards, I realized, I really need to sit on the other side of the table with a company and be on the board. And so I've been on startup boards and nonprofit boards, but I'm working to get on corporate board. And Harvard came out with this program called Board Leadership for Women or something like that. It's board governance. And it was only for women, which I honestly had never been in a program with all women before. So that was different. But there were 67 women from 17 countries. They were very high level, like the president of Old Navy at the time, or Gap. There was president of Gap, I think. And then there was, one of the top 100 most powerful people in Saudi Arabia, a person whose family started Pakistan, woman from the United Nations, it was incredible. And so after that, I ended up getting the idea to pull together a formal network of the women who've gone through corporate governance at Harvard. And today I have a co-founder, and we have 175 members from 22 countries. And we're working together to advance the state of women on boards and in senior leadership positions.
Excellent. And I believe you spoke at the United Nations, if I'm not mistaken. Could you tell us about that?
Well, it was because of that class, actually. So in my small group was the woman who was over women's equality at UNESCO, which is a part of the United Nations. It's the education, the research area. And so she invited me to come and be a part of their soft power conference. And they brought together people from all over the world. It was small, like 400 people. But they were extremely high level, like a presidential candidate in Israel, a princess from the Netherlands, it's like someone running for president in another country, but they were all coming together to try to change the picture for women, because the research is showing that at our current pace, now I have to say it's probably picked up in the last few years, but at that time it's like 2017. At 2017, it would take us 115 years at our current pace to reach equality in gender equality. And we just said, that's too long. And so that's what I was there to talk about.
And I understand that you spent about a third of your time in a volunteer role with Women Execs on boards. What brought that about? What are some of the goals of the organization as well?
Well, so what, it was really, I don't know, because I think I was sort of raised like a boy, that I had not experienced a lot of discrimination. And so, there had been some, but when you grow up on a farm, you're like, whatever, like it just didn't really bother me. I think the biggest discrimination I ever had was when I was trying to raise some capital from our tech firm. And that was in Oklahoma, where some of the investors were like, "Now, honey, like, are you sure you know what you're doing?"
Oh boy.
And so, but when I went to that class, I realized, there's a lot of discrimination, and they have really had it pretty tough. And if you look at the women who've gone before us, like the women's suffragette and all of that. Sometimes I wonder, like, how did we get here? How did we ever get to this place where women were treated lesser than? And so, anyway, that when I got there and I saw that, I just thought, there's a need, and someone has to lead. And if no one steps up and says, look, this is worth it for my daughter, for my sister's daughters, for all the people coming up behind us, it is worth it to spend my time to plow a path for the women coming up behind us. And, it takes some tough cookies to do it. And this network's full of them. So that's what we're doing.
Awesome. And I also understand you're releasing a book in September. So what's the book about and what inspired you?
Yeah, so the book is actually about a lot of the women in this network, and it's for men and women, because it's called Courage to Advance, and it's meant to be an inspirational leadership book about how to get through tough times, because a lot of people are really going through some tough times right now.
Right.
And what we wanted to do is get it out pretty quick, if we could, to just encourage people, like, no matter how bad it is, because you'll see in this book, there are some stories. These women have been through so much. There were a couple of them that after I wrote the story, we did interviews, and then I wrote the stories. And after I wrote the stories, I just cried, because what they had been through was so awful. And then the point then is they made it through, and they went on to live good and happy and healthy lives, and are making a difference for others. And then they actually give their advice too. So a little bit like a chicken soup for the soul, it's really about being a leader, getting through stuff. And when I say leader, I do want to clarify, it doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or if you're the leader in your household, doesn't matter. It is the same concept. Visionary leadership is the same concept. And so is being a leader. So, you know, when I talk about that, people sometimes think it's really lofty, but really you can be a leader wherever you are.
Absolutely. You know, unrelated to business, what is one thing people probably don't know about you that they may be surprised to learn about you?
Well, given what I've told you already about my background, this might not be total surprise, but what I tell people when I'm out and about around the world, when they ask a question like that, is I can drive a Steiger. So most people don't even know what a Steiger is, but you know, this big 4-wheel drive tractors with the 4 wheels and all of that. So that's my claim to fame when people want to know what something surprising about me.
Oh yeah, that is absolutely. It'd be interesting to see you on a video clip somewhere. Okay, so I also understand. You know, you mentioned you're working to be in a corporate board position.
Right.
What motivates you to do that kind of work?
Well, so basically, so being on a corporate board is about board governance, and you know, the number one job of a corporate board member is to choose the right CEO. And then also, I mean, you're going to lean in on things like safety and supply chain and strategic market and all of that. But if you get the CEO wrong, you can really damage the company. And so, because I've worked with a lot of CEOs in my work, I was really motivated to do that. And so now I'm working to get on my own corporate board, you know, large private or a public board. But my dream board is John Deere. So I want to get, you know, I love it. I'd love to get back to my roots and be on the John Deere board. So if you know the John Deere board members, you know, give them a ring.
Absolutely. You know, what's the best way for people to connect with you and get a hold of you?
I'd love for people to connect. Please do. LinkedIn is a super easy way, Bonnie Hagemann. And the other thing is our website, executivedevelopment.com. And if you have a company, we have some great new technology for making culture visible and for HR and leadership development surveys. We're going to be the one-stop shop for HR and leadership development surveys. We'd love for you to be a beta, and which just means you're going to get a lot of extra stuff to be an early adopter.
Very good. Well, I'll be sure and include your info here in the video. I really do appreciate you coming on with me today, Bonnie. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Trucking Tower Podcast. We'll see you guys soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.